Hello, I'm Roslyn Hanzi. I'm the Director of Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights was formed about 25 years ago. So next year we'll be celebrating 25 years of existence. And basically what we do is we are a group of lawyers that are working towards fostering a culture of human rights in Zimbabwe. And when we were formed as an organization, it was towards the mid to late 90s, in 1996, when lawyers became increasingly concerned about the human rights trajectory in the country back then. But we've seen that almost 25 years later, we are still continuing to advocate for the protection and advancement of human rights. So we normally use litigation because we are lawyers naturally. But we also work with other partners that are doing different work, whether they are in civil society, whether they're in the private sector. And sometimes we also do cooperate with government in areas of mutual interest. So as human rights lawyers, we've been actively monitoring and following developments around the lockdown. And we are trying to see how we can assist, play our part, ensuring that whilst we are concerned about the welfare of citizens, particularly their health because of this virus, their rights are also protected. The challenge that we have is that the COVID-19, the coronavirus as they call it, is a global phenomenon. And Zimbabwe was not the first country to record a case of the coronavirus. We were following developments in other countries in Zimbabwe. And we could see what other countries were doing in terms of restrictive measures and trying to prevent the spread or minimizing or mitigating the risk of having that virus spread in their own countries. And of course, some may argue that we did not act fast enough, or we could have done more to prevent the occurrence of some incidents in Zimbabwe. But of course, if you look at our economic situation and you look at the welfare of most people before this COVID-19 came about, we have, depending on who you are talking to, some will say 72%, some will say 90%, some will say 95% unemployment rate. Most people are self-employed. So you tend to find that most people, they have to go out to the streets to sell their wares. They are vending, they are informal traders, and they're trying to make a living for them to be able to survive. So when the government eventually said, fine, we need to take more measures, I think the issue of social protection was not taken seriously. And there was no proper framework, planning to ensure that at least people will not go hungry in their homes. People would not want to die of a virus as long as they have food and water. And if you look at the narrative from civil society over the last 2 decades, we've been saying, why not direct more resources and invest in the right to health, the health sector? Why not direct more resources and invest in water and sanitation? Zimbabwe in 2001 was one of the countries, most probably with a sizable delegation to Abuja. And they signed the Abuja Declaration, and that declaration says the African countries that were there present then should have been committing 15% towards the health sector. So by the time COVID-19 comes, we should have had a functional health system, and we should also have had some social protection cover that was already available. But of course, if you look at the situation, Zimbabweans find themselves in a catch-22. The majority of Zimbabweans do find themselves in a catch-22. There is a virus, invisible virus, that we are aware of is spreading. You are an informal trader, you cannot go out. And you are waiting for government to provide rescue. And they are now saying that they are going to be providing you with 200 RTGS, Zimbabwean dollars. And if you are going to be doing the maths, I don't know how much value that is in terms of maybe other currencies that are functional. And the talk was that it's going to be available this week. But the lockdown has been there since 30 March. So what have people been eating? And of course, of concern, you also tend to find that the regulations came about. There was SI 76, SI 77, 80, 81. They kept coming, you know, like candy. They kept coming one after the other. And some of the regulations, of course, though they may be well-meaning, The real concern is how they are being implemented. Because you tend to find that there's a regulation that is saying you should restrict your movement to 5 kilometers from your home. And if you're going to be moving around, then it has to be for some essential service. Maybe you want to go to the supermarket to buy food, or maybe you want to go to the pharmacy to get medication, or you want to take someone who is not feeling well to the doctor or to the hospital. And there are some people who really need to venture out of their homes and go and get that, whether it's food, medicine, or go to the doctor. But behold, the minute that you set foot from your door, you step out of your house into your yard, sometimes you do have some people waiting for you. They're telling you to go back inside. And unfortunately, from what we have seen, you are not told to go back inside in a civil manner. We have also seen people who have approached lawyers. They are cooking in their homes, in their yards. They are using open fires because there's no electricity. They cannot afford gas, so they cannot cook inside. They are using coal, they're using firewood. And then you have a truckload of law enforcement officers and also some members of the military descending on you and telling you to go back inside and cook inside with firewood in an urban area. And most likely you are a tenant, you don't own that house. How do you deal with other health challenges of cooking inside an open fire inside a house, a room, with very minimum ventilation? So the real challenge that we have is that the majority of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabweans, people in Zimbabwe would really want to comply and ensure that they don't get the virus, because they know that the health system has not been well resourced. Although, of course, they are now saying that they're going to be providing some relief, some funds to deal with some of these issues around testing. I think we just saw a new strategy that they're rolling out. But as it is right now, what most people are concerned about, bread and butter issues, how do they survive to the next meal? And how is this food going to be distributed? We have had concerns that some of it is being distributed on party lines, but the Constitution is clear that there should be no discrimination. So what we have seen now, which is quite interesting, and I was also following the news from South Africa, you tend to find that there's this mentality amongst law enforcement agents so far that I've seen, particularly in some African countries, that they're probably immune to the virus. It's not clear. They are not practicing what is written in the regulations. I was just seeing some report from South Africa also commenting on the same issues, that they should be social distancing as police officers, because they are not immune, especially if they're not wearing any protective clothing, or they don't have any masks, whatever type of mask they may be using. We tend to find that they're moving in their numbers, pegged in trucks, whether they are army trucks or they are police trucks or they are just trucks, but they are pegged like sardines in a truck. And when they are then trying to enforce these regulations, they're not practicing social distancing amongst themselves and with the people that they're getting in touch with, which is of course a cause of concern for us. And one of the issues that we raised in the application that was determined yesterday with the interim provisional order by the High Court was that as law enforcement officers, they should also be practicing what is in the regulations, particularly around social distancing. We also had filed another application on behalf of the Doctors for Human Rights, which was also saying that there are some frontline people, medical practitioners, but also there are also other people that we believe should be getting some protective support in terms of whether it's going to be masks or sanitizers. And some of these include those people who are going to be driving the public transport buses, the Zupco buses, and also even the police officers. We were saying they should be getting masks. And we are aware that there's a shortage of surgical masks, but there are the masks that they can be using just to minimize the spread of the virus. And following news from other countries, although for us we are not yet aware, in South Africa, for instance, there were reports that police officers actually did get the virus. They got infected with the virus, and they were then forced to close a police station. And for us, we are really worried that if we do not mitigate or protect the law enforcement whether it's going to be the police and the other law enforcement people, particularly the enforcers of these regulations, because there's a wide array of these people, including municipal police officers, the army, but the army should be working. And we do hope they roll it out, because they are looking at all the government, the civil servants. We've been in touch with the public. We're interacting with the public during the lockdown. They have also included the law enforcement. And we do hope that even the military and other people who are enforcing the regulations are regularly tested, but they also practice what is in the regulations and what has been recommended around social distancing. And of course, the other major concern that we have not been able to deal with effectively has been the fact that we have had reports of people being rounded up when they are moving around from their homes to supermarkets. In one case, someone was buying vegetables and they were just rounded up. They were put in a truck with everyone else, and you don't even know who is in the truck. Are they infected or not? Because if you do follow the news, you notice that some people will not have any symptoms, but they're infected. We have had people detained, and our main concern, which is something that we are going to communicate formally with the Commissioner General of Police and the Minister of Home Affairs, is that we have received credible reports, and in one case we assisted one of the victims, where the police are insisting that they do not want people to use point-of-sale cards when paying for these fines for purportedly violating these COVID restrictions. In this case, they are being forced to pay hard cash, and that is the RTGS dollars, and that is just unreasonable, because every government department should be able to accept any form of payment, particularly the point of sale, because there's no circulation of cash, and banks are not really operating normally anyway. And it will be difficult for someone to be caught going to the bank to say, I need to withdraw money for a fine for my relative. They will be arrested by the same people. So we are concerned that there's also this money-making tendency that is coming out in terms of mass arrests. So far we see that they're saying they've in excess of 2,000 people that they've arrested. And definitely we should assure you that as human rights lawyers, we are concerned that none of those people have been given the chance to contact the lawyers. At one time we tried to access people who had been arrested in Bulawayo. And of course our lawyers were given the runaround. They were also threatened and told that you should not be out here, you should be staying at home. Unfortunately, it appears that there's ignorance amongst the law enforcement agents. Because if you look at some of the statutory instruments that have come out, they specifically link the work of lawyers who are court officers of the court, and also the Chief Justice has issued practice directions in terms of what cases are going to be going about. So lawyers who are practicing their trade in accordance with the practice direction of the Chief Justice and as officers of the court can still continue to operate in this country.
Okay, do you think that our government is doing enough in terms of fighting this COVID-19 virus?
Well, from the beginning, we have really been concerned around several issues, and I think with the judgment yesterday, the order, the interim, it was actually a final order that was given out on behalf of the Doctors for Human Rights around compelling certain measures to be taken and implemented. We felt that we were lagging behind, and our concern was you lock us down for 21 days, you lock the country down for 21 days. After 21 days, if you're not doing certain things, then the virus will still be there, it will not disappear. Why not then complement the lockdown with other measures? Robust testing, providing of frontline health workers with protective clothing and the necessary tools that they need, the incentives that they need, and ensuring that everyone else who is not locked down is not going to be contracting or passing on that virus. So those were some of the issues that we're really concerned about. And then the other issue that has always been a bone of contention for us is issues around access to potable water for Harare residents and residents around the country. You tend to find that we have had this perennial, persistent challenge of accessing potable water in the urban areas, for instance. And There have been a number of cases that have been taken over the years to compel local authorities and central government to avail the necessary resources, particularly central government working with the Ministry of Finance, to ensure that there's access to potable water. So we feel that government has been slow and that they've really not been listening to us. Because if they were listening to us, we started talking about Abuja, when Abuja was signed, 15%, 15%. But of course, 15% was going to other sectors. I think if you compare what health has been getting from 2001, maybe vis-a-vis what the army has been getting, then you see that, of course, there was no prioritization. And now we do have this invisible enemy, but who is going to be fighting it? It's not the ammunition or whatever has been invested in a certain sector that is going to deal with it, but it's our healthcare, it's our medical practitioners, it's the nurses, it's the doctors who are on the front line and their support staff. And our hospitals are not equipped, so how do we fight this virus? My comment is that we are prioritizing the wrong issues. I'm not saying we should let people roam around when it's a lockdown. But my concern is also that the lockdown was announced. I'm not sure whether there was robust conscientizing or training of those who were supposed to enforce the lockdown to understand what they're supposed to be enforcing. Because if you look at most of those people that have been arrested, some have been picked up from their homes, their yards. They are in their home. And then some are picked up because they're going to buy vegetables, they're going to the supermarket, they're going to the store. And then you say you are arresting people who are breaching the lockdown regulations, but they are allowed to do that. The real challenge that we also have is that those regulations, they give too much powers to those enforcing them. Because they say that if you are caught outside, then you have a burden of proof to show and convince the person who has caught you where you are going and what you're doing, which is wrong under criminal law. And even in civil law, he who alleges must prove. If you are saying that I'm in breach, you must prove that. If I'm saying, and you see me holding a bundle of vegetables, and I'm telling you I'm coming from, that's food, I have a right to food. So the real concern is that the regulations came about, they were implemented before the people who were implementing knew what they were supposed to be implementing and how they should be implementing. Because now you see these enforcers, very overzealous, some of them, that are going into people's homes, or even if they catch you on the street, they do not wait for an explanation. They just start to use violence on you, they torture you, they make people sing about coronavirus, they make you do very undignified acts. That's wrong, and that is not going to clear up the image of the country. There needs to be respect for human rights. The Constitution is very clear. There are certain rights right now, even in this situation of a lockdown, that can never be limited. And these are the right to life, unless if you're on death row. Otherwise, your right to life is guaranteed. We know that there is someone who was fatally tortured and assaulted under the guise of enforcing these regulations in Bulawayo, and they are now deceased. You should not be tortured or subjected to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. That's another right that can never be limited, even during the 21 days. You have a right to human dignity. That's another right. You have a right to fair trial. That's another right. And you also have a right to a habeas corpus order in the event that you are disappeared or anything. You have that right for someone to go to court and say they should be bringing that person to court or that body to court. So there are a number of rights that cannot be limited in Section 86, subsection 3. And this also applies even during a state of emergency. And the good thing about this section that I'm talking about, it actually also says that no person can violate those rights. So that's what we are saying, that fine, you're arresting these people, and then you're summarily charging them. They're not even allowed access to a lawyer because your fair trial starts when you are arrested. You should be able to exercise Section 50, your right to call your lawyer, and they should give you those, but they're not giving you that opportunity. They're making you pay a fine, and they say we don't want point of sale, we want cash.